Had a lot of fun here tonight. Came to the Indy Ignite second home game.
Professional women's volleyball on center court in Fishers, drawing the attention of Pat McAfee and Caitlin Clark, two of Indiana's most recognizable athletes. The $200 million Fishers Event Center, open for just a few months now, but already a big hit. And it's not just volleyball. We dig into what's driving success at Central Indiana's newest hotspot with Fishers Mayor Scott Fadness on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. It's not just women's volleyball scoring big at the new Fishers Event Center. It is also hockey.
Well, the ice officially heated up in Fishers tonight as the Indy Fuel played their first ever game at their brand new home in front of a sold-out crowd.
And concerts. And everything in between. The Fishers Event Center, already a big hit, opening in November, providing a new strategy for suburban communities to connect with community. And I'm pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Fishers Mayor Scott Fadness. Mayor, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Gary. Glad to be here.
Lots going on. Of course, I think in all of the times I've interviewed you, I could always start the interview by saying lots going on in Fishers because there seemingly is never a dull moment. The most recent development, which I know has a lot of people talking, is the Fishers Event Center. To kind of kick us off, you got the first, I think the first event was what, a concert?
Turnpike Troubadours was the first concert, and then we've had a heck of a lot of hockey and just lately women's volleyball.
Give me an idea of the reaction, what folks are saying. I was there maybe a month before it opened or so. The facility looks great, 7,500 seat venue, I think. What's kind of been the general reaction?
We've been really pleased. It's been overwhelmingly positive, and just the variety of different events that are happening there and the ways in which you can enjoy it. I was talking to the ECHL commissioner who runs all of the ECHL hockey, and he literally said, look, this is an NHL experience in a 7,500 seat arena. And that's really what we were going for. And so whether it has been hockey, whether it's been the Women's Volleyball League, whether it's been concerts, everyone that I've talked to has really enjoyed the venue, and that's what we were shooting for.
Yeah, and volleyball, Indiana's a big, I don't know if people know, is a big volleyball state. And I think the Professional Volleyball League and the franchise that's at the Fishers Event Center, I think they're set up for success because that's an exciting night out.
It kind of speaks to our entrepreneurial spirit when Jim Schumacher and his team came to us and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. We took a risk on them because we believed in what they wanted to do. We think women's sports is clearly having a moment right now, and these women are tremendous athletes. And these women coming out of college volleyball today are superstars. And up until these leagues, they were headed to Europe. They didn't have a venue or a format to really express themselves here in the States. And so for Indiana, you're right, Gary. Volleyball is a strong program here in Indiana. So opening night, sold out crowd. The energy was incredible. And these women are such role models. I left the game, walked downstairs, and I was shocked. There had to have been 400 people standing in line to get autographs from two of the players. And that's the kind of stardom that comes with a lot of these female athletes.
Why an event center? I know when you announced plans for this, people were saying, wow, that's interesting, an interesting concept. There have been so many things going on in Fishers, from downtown development to attracting new and innovative businesses to now an event center. Why did you decide to, you talk about taking a risk. It's a calculated risk to build an event center.
$200 million calculated risk. Honestly, it was about proximity. People today, they want to live, work, be entertained in close proximity. They want all of those amenities nearby. And we're not trying to compete with Lucas Oil Stadium or Banker's Life. But to have an amenity like this that can put on world-class entertainment, now residents, we took a couple steps forward. We created a culinary environment with the yard in the district and all these new restaurants. So now they have somewhere great to eat out right in their hometown. The next thing is, okay, after dinner, where do we go? What do we do? And so creating this was just an opportunity to add a quality of life or an amenity that otherwise didn't exist here, and fill that middle market, which I think is missing. We're not going to land Taylor Swift or Garth Brooks, but we are going to have world-class entertainment at a smaller, more intimate venue. And I think people are looking for that.
You mentioned you're not competing with Lucas Oil or Gainbridge or those big, those large venues. Will you compete, or do you think you will compete with Noblesville, for example? There's another neighboring city that's building an arena that will be the home of the Pacers G League team. Is that a competitive or a complementary kind of thing?
Imagine at some point it's competitive. I don't know. It's a smaller venue. I think it's about half the size of ours. So they're going to cater to a different clientele than we would, just like we're catering to a different clientele than Lucas Oil Stadium is. In totality, I think what I hope is that over time, we might be able to leverage all of these assets collectively to bring in even bigger format tournaments and different things like that. So, yes, there'll be times where we compete, but I think there'll be more times where we can collaborate and to kind of build on one another.
You have, I think, from the start of your administration, kind of tried to create a brand of a vibrant, entrepreneurial, innovative city. I think you've done that in a number of areas. But as I look at Hamilton County, I look at what's happening in Fishers with the event center, the Noblesville arena, obviously what's happening in Westfield. Has Hamilton County, Indianapolis is a sports capital, certainly a reputation earned over many decades. Has Hamilton County kind of become somewhat of a sports hub?
I think it's yes, in a different way. I think one of the brilliant things that happened over the years for Indianapolis, and a lot of the leaders back then really held tight to keeping the major professional teams in the heart of the city, where a lot of other metropolitan areas, they get pulled out into the suburbs. They fought really hard to keep that in downtown Indianapolis, and that has served them well. I think what you're seeing in Hamilton County is we're 350,000 people. We'll probably be 500,000 people in the next 20 to 40 years. Great incomes. And again, it goes back to this proximity piece. People want to be near all of their entertainment options. And so I think youth athletics, smaller or maybe smaller venue needs, I think we'll meet those. So I think we're a complement to the Colts and to the Pacers and things of that nature, not necessarily a competition.
Yeah. As you look at Hamilton County, and my wife and I, we were in Noblesville, actually, a couple of weeks ago, having dinner, had not been downtown there for a while. And I was struck by, the restaurant we ate at was super. They've got some things going on downtown. But as you look at Hamilton County, look at what's happening in Fishers, Noblesville, Westfield, Carmel, of course, that has transformed itself. How do you, is there a competitive, again, back to the competitive thing, among the mayor? I'm sure you're friends with all the mayors. You like them.
Sure.
But is there a competitive little flavor in there too?
I think what's interesting and what we got to be careful of, when Brainerd and Andy Cook and John Ditzler and I were first, all working together or working towards our city's visions, I think we all had very distinctly different personalities, different visions for our communities. And I didn't honestly give much attention to what Jim Brainerd was doing. I don't think Jim Brainerd cared much what I was doing. Andy Cook was doing his thing. Right. I think as long as we continue to try to do that, where each community is trying to create the best possible version of itself, and we're not doing like a keep up with the Joneses kind of scenario, because that's when you start to cannibalize each other is, well, they did something, so I got to go do that. I think as long as we really put our heads down and go, Fishers is going to be what Fishers needs to be. And whatever that is, let's pursue it with the utmost dogmatic, efforts. Same with Carmel, Westfield, Noblesville. If we all do that, the sum total of all four communities is going to be something pretty extraordinary. And I think that's what we just have to make sure we continue to focus on.
And I assume that takes work. You got to be intentional about it, about doing that, because as I look at it, from a consumer standpoint, I do think that each of the cities we're talking about here have their distinct brand, if you will, or identity. So I think it's working, but to continue that, you gotta work at it.
I mean, you have to be disciplined. Like, I try to keep my head down here at Fishers and really just say, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to continue to do? How do we keep pushing forward? And Westfield's going to have their announcements about things they're doing, and Noblesville's going to have theirs at Carmel. Just because they have an announcement about something that's exciting doesn't mean we should replicate it. It means we should stay focused on the track that we have and the vision that we want to do in our city. And so I think as long as we continue to do that, I think Hamilton County is going to be a really dynamic place. And I think it's fun, the fact that, Carmel's very different than Fishers culturally. Like we're not into the same things. We're not going to be. We're not trying to replicate being the high-end arts capital of Indiana. That's not who Fishers is. Kudos to Carmel for being it.
Mm-hmm. We started out talking about the Fishers Event Center. How does that fit into the broader strategy that you have there in Fishers? And I guess more immediately, close to the event center, you mentioned the yard and what that has become, and how much investment has gone in there, and what an entertainment district that has become. How does the Fishers Event Center kind of further that vision you have for Fishers?
In the coming few years, you'll really see it all come together there, where from 116th Street to 106th Street literally will become a city into itself, with a lot of development and a lot of culinary opportunities, a lot of people living there, some office development. When it's all said and done, that stretch from 116th to 106th Street will probably have north of $1 billion of investment in really kind of an entertainment district, if you will. And when you pair that with just across the interstate, the home of Formula One racing is just just across the interstate, and then you've got our entire I-69 corridor is now being lined with life science companies. So you put all that together, and it just creates this really dynamic place for commerce to occur, for people to be entertained, and it really, I think, sets us apart as a really just a fun place to be a part of a community.
Yeah, you mentioned a city or a district in and of itself, so you're kind of talking about, again, as you look at Fishers, growing population-wise, and just from a development standpoint, you've got a downtown district, you've got the entertainment district, you've got, business districts. So you're talking about kind of that kind of concept.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think these are going to be distinct personalities. If you go on one side of the interstate, you see Topgolf, you see IKEA, you have the best brand names and restaurants in the region and in the state, and we're going to be bringing some in that are national marquee restaurants. You have the event center. That's a power suburban environment. On the other side of the interstate in downtown Fishers, you're going to have a much more walkable, traditional kind of towny feel to the urban center of downtown Fishers. And then around all of that, you have, Stevanato with $600 million investment in life science, Incog with $200 million investment in life science. You have Jennison, Thermo Fishers, Quantigen, and hopefully more to come here in the near future. And then you have racing. You have Prema Racing, the Italian racing team on 96th Street, accompanied with the big one, the Formula One team that Dan Tauris now is in control of. So, I mean, you just add all that up, and we're still only a community of 105,000 people. We're not Indianapolis. But to have all of that in a community our size, just the amount of energy is palpable.
That is an amazing story when you think about it. And you mentioned some of those companies, Mayor. I know, and I remember, I think we did a story on it. You talked about the whole idea to acquire some land to create a life sciences hub or district or, a focus area. And I think you were surprised at how quickly that land got gobbled up by companies. You mentioned Stevanato. We're going to do a story on them this weekend. That's an amazing facility, huge investment there.
The life science conversation's probably gotten a little drowned out just by the LEAP district and Lilly and what they've done. But, that out there, required $700 million of public investment, and it's a big project and can be transformative for the whole region. But while that was going on quietly here in Fishers, we're closing in on $1 billion, if not north of that, good paying jobs and more in the pipeline. And that was an industry, frankly, that we had no real hooks in prior to COVID, and really just kind of focused in on that area and have continued to focus in on it. and have seen a lot of momentum. And I think it's such a bright point for Central Indiana in a time where the economy is tough and it's hard to figure out what our path forward is here in Central Indiana. I think life science manufacturing is absolutely somewhere where we can excel.
You getting interest from other cities around Indiana, certainly, but maybe around the country as they look at what you're doing and have done in Fishers from a development standpoint, a planning standpoint? Do you get many calls kind of wondering what the secret sauce is?
Yeah, from time to time, for sure. We have communities come in and tour different components of our city. Sometimes, early on, and you were a big part of this, the whole Launch Fishers entrepreneurial movement, we had a lot of communities come in to try to figure out how to do that. Now with the arena and mixed use development, we've certainly had people come in, and then on the life science front, lots of conversations about it. And I wish there was some secret sauce to it, to be honest with you. It's just a lot of hard work, a lot of good luck, frankly, and then just executing when the window opens. I've been really fortunate to have a community that has aligned around the vision. And so when we see it, we grab it and we go do it, and that has worked in our favor over the last 10 years.
And you've taken, as you mentioned earlier, taken some risks. You mentioned Launch Fishers, and I think that's a great example of kind of the history, the heritage of Fishers and that entrepreneurial brand, if you will. John Wexler with this idea to create what maybe a lot of people thought was crazy, pie in the sky at the time, to put this innovation hub, working space, co-working space in the basement of the library, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We started it on a shoestring budget. John and I went over there. We moved furniture around to get it going. And, and we're still we may be the largest co-working and entrepreneurial space left in operation today. A lot of them have kind of phased out, and we're still going strong. We're still trying to create more companies and more opportunities. And we haven't lost sight of that in any way, shape, or form, and want to continue to evolve it. And so you're right. I mean, all these were just kind of gut instinct. Let's go do it, and not necessarily be afraid to fail either. You're gonna screw up, you're gonna trip, and just own up to that when it happens, and then be obsessed about the experience, whether it was Launch Fishers or even at the arena. I joke with people when I go. I have my wife use a stopwatch to see how long it takes us to get from the interstate to the arena and then back out, because I'm obsessed about people having a great experience. And it's those little things that just add up over time, and hopefully you get some momentum in your community. And I think right now, I'm really pleased with where Fishers is at currently.
Yeah, you mentioned failing, not being afraid to fail. I remembered, I'm sure you were there, may have done this event for a couple of years. I know one for sure I was there. It was Fail Fest.
Yeah.
And it was all about failure.
Right.
And it was great attendance, a lot of people there. Yeah. And I think it added again to that entrepreneurial brand that I think the city of Fishers has used very well to create kind of a name for itself.
It's paid off dividends in odd ways. We landed Incog Pharmaceutical, which was a startup company now nearing $200 million of investment, because they were entrepreneurs and we had a kindred spirit and they wanted to take a risk, and we were willing to be a part of that. We landed the volleyball team because they were a startup and they were going to be high risk, and we took a risk on them, and we understand and appreciate that. So I think when we started that entrepreneurial movement back in the day and really made it become part of our DNA, I didn't know, nor did I foresee, all the different ways that would come to fruition in a variety of different fronts, and certainly has been a fun ride.
Much more ahead with Fishers Mayor Scott Fadness. We look at what is next for this rapidly growing city in Hamilton County. That and much more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Scott Fadness, the mayor of Fishers, Indiana, the heart of Hamilton County. Are you the fastest? Certainly one of the fastest. Where do you rank now, Scott? Fishers in terms
honestly,
of fastest
we're
growing
not.
city?
We're population-wise, this is interesting. We're probably about 105,000 people today. We just annexed another 3,000 people. What shocked me the other day was Evansville is only, I think, about 112,000. So it won't be that.
Wow.
Yeah, it won't be that long until. Yeah, it's highly likely Fishers will be the third largest city in the state of Indiana.
Wow.
Which I would have never thought about until I was looking at some stats. And that's surprising to a lot of people because I think they just think of us as a suburb.
Right.
But yeah, third largest city in the state here in another 3 to 5 years, probably.
Okay. I never would have thought about it of that too either. December 1983, my wife and I moved from Fort Wayne here. I took a job as a reporter at Channel 6, and I can remember that first weekend we were here, a buddy and I went out, we were going to grab a beer, and we said, well, let's go north. We live in an apartment on Allisonville Road. Let's go north. There's got to be some place up there. And we came to Fishers. And gosh, what was there? There was a Shell station there and a little strip center, Sunblessed. I mean, that was about it.
Yeah, early 1980s, you would have been in probably a population of 2,500 to 5,000 people.
Yeah.
So to think that we're closing in on 110,000 in that time frame is just extraordinary.
Lots of positives that go along with that. Certainly, lots of challenges with growth. What keeps you up at night, or what would you identify, Scott? Is there a biggest challenge that you're facing with the growth?
What probably keeps me up at night is that Hamilton County has been very successful. We're very fortunate, but a lot of our success and growth has come at the cost of Indianapolis. And so what I mean by that is either people moved here or companies are moving here.
Right.
But what I worry about is, do we have a lot of inbound jobs, investment, growth, and interest in our metropolitan area as a whole? Because at some point you can only have so many companies move from one jurisdiction to the next jurisdiction.
Right.
So I spend a lot of my time honestly worried more about the greater metropolitan area than I do specifically about Fishers. Fishers is in a pretty strong position right now, and that's why I spend a lot of time on regional efforts.
Yeah, well, talk about that, because that is such a huge issue, and I know, and I've been doing this for a long time, and I know regionalism has always been a hot topic of discussion. Certainly, Central Indiana is not alone. Regions around the state have not done a very good job of cooperating, regionally. How would you assess the regional situation here in Central Indiana?
It's getting much better than what it was. When I first started, there wasn't a great deal of collaboration, but I will tell you, on the public sector side, where we were probably the worst at it, we've come a long ways. We now have the Central Indiana Regional Development Authority. I was fortunate enough to be a part of getting that legislation passed.
Right.
And I chair that group, and happy to report we have 27 cities in Central Indiana are now a member of that organization. And we've pursued north of $500 million worth of grants. We've aligned on a number of different issues, and every vote we've taken to date, which is, I continue to be surprised, has been unanimous.
Wow.
We've really built a lot of solid consensus on the public sector side. The next big step for Central Indiana is to take the public sector, the private sector, and the philanthropic sector, and let's get aligned towards a really ambitious vision, and then let's move.
Yeah.
We need a new identity. We need an aspirational vision for Central Indiana. And that, to me, that's the next big hurdle. The first hurdle was just getting the public sector organized and aligned. And I think we're knock on wood, we're there. Now it's time to put those resources to work and do something aspirational.
What would that be? I hear people talk about the river, talk about White River and the potential that has. And certainly, to me, I look at what's happening in downtown Indianapolis now, which has gone through some challenging few years here, but with multiple billions of dollars of projects underway or on the drawing board, tipping point perhaps downtown with everything going on in Fishers and the suburbs, an opportune time. What's that next big thing, that aspirational thing you talk about?
I think we have to call our shot. This city, and I talk about the collective metropolitan area, we were an industrial city, and then that got gutted, and then we became the amateur sports capital. And since that time, to be honest with you, in my opinion, Gary, we just really haven't come up with a new chapter. And we've struggled with that for I would say for over a decade now. We've been kind of treading water, trying to figure out what's next. There was a time where we thought kind of we would be the next technology capital when Exact Target had their exit. And
right.
We really thought, okay, we're going. And you remember those glory days of tech.
Yep.
I think those have kind of come and gone a little bit or evolved. So I think the next big step is to say, this is the economy of the future for Central Indiana, and this is where we need this is the infrastructure we need to get it done. And then I think to your point about quality of life and all these other things, one of the dynamics that needs to shift is, I had this conversation recently with someone who was talking about downtown Indianapolis, and they were saying, we got to figure out how to get all of you Hamilton County residents back down to downtown Indianapolis. I just fundamentally told him, I said, I think you need to completely change your frame of mind on that. Mm-hmm. I think you need to think of downtown Indianapolis as a standalone, dynamic area that needs to have people living and working in that close proximity, just like Hamilton County needs to come up with the same scenario. Like the idea that people are going to go back to the days of commuting an hour and 45 minutes a day, I just don't see it. I think people have become accustomed to proximity. They want things nearby. And so what downtown Indianapolis needs is to bring people and get them living down there, bring those students in from IU and Purdue, grow that population base down there so you have a thriving economy in its own right. Yeah. Same with Hamilton County. And then the kit of parts, all those things together create a really unique and dynamic region.
Yeah. Anything, back to that whole strategy standpoint, anything missing from the mix in Fishers that you would like to see added in the future?
We need to continue to grow our life science base here. I want to really create a strong cluster of industry here. We're on our way, but I'd like to see some more companies locate here. I feel really good about where we're at on office. Office space has become a 4-letter word, but believe it or not, quietly, we've eaten up a lot of our vacancy in Fisher. So I'm happy about that. We need a little more density in downtown. We need some more people living downtown to support the restaurants and businesses that are down here. So, there's certainly still work to be done. And then the other big question mark to me is, I don't think people yet understand the gravity of what the investment is that Dan Towers and the folks are doing with this Formula One team. And what gets developed around that, what that vision is for the campus around Formula One will be really interesting over time. So still got some question marks out there to figure out and plenty of work to do.
Yeah, well, to kind of add on to that, as we wind this conversation down, what do you see you mentioned Formula One. What do you see as kind of that next big thing, or those next big things in Fishers that we can expect here in the coming months and perhaps years?
More life science investment. And then I would tell you kind of filling out that vision for what's going to be around the arena, rolling that out so people truly understand the development and the magnitude that will be over there. And then probably figuring out what goes around Formula One. I think those will all be components of continuing to progress this vision of Fishers.
Fishers Mayor Scott Fadness. So Scott, is this? I lose track of time sometimes.
Right.
Is this your third term?
Yeah. So I think I'm starting my 4th term technically because I had a odd 1-year term. But to put things short and brief, I just finished my 10th year in office as of the end of the year. So a decade now I've been in this role, and it has been a very active time, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. Fishers has certainly evolved into a shining city here in Indiana. And you mentioned before too long, it's going to be the 3rd largest city in the state, which is amazing. Scott, I really appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate your leadership, not only for Fishers, but regionally and around the state of Indiana as well. Thanks very much.
Gary.
And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. We are a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes, 200 plus episodes, and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.